In 2011, at Grand Valley State University in Michigan, Samantha Stites was just another college student. She was focused on her studies, her friends, and her future. She had no idea that a brief encounter on campus would mark the beginning of an ordeal that would haunt her for the next 11 years. That encounter was with a man named Christopher Thomas. He was several years older than her, socially awkward, and forgettable in nearly every way. But for him, meeting Samantha wasn't just a passing moment. It was the spark of a lifelong obsession. At first, Thomas's interest came across as awkward persistence. He asked her out. She politely declined. He asked again, and again. Samantha tried to brush him off, assuming he'd eventually move on like anyone else. But he didn't. Instead, the rejection seemed to fuel something darker inside him. He began sending her lengthy, emotionally charged messages. He called her a jelly bean, a pet name that made her skin crawl. He quoted the Bible, insisting their relationship was God's plan. His words carried the weight of obsession. "I want you to be part of my life," he told her. Samantha's friends noticed. Her roommate recalled feeling sorry for him and was nice to him. He took that and ran away with it. Another friend remembered Thomas showing up to her workplace uninvited, holding flowers, convinced he was her knight in shining armor. For Samantha, each interaction chipped away at her sense of safety. Every time she saw him, she was more and more scared. Then one day, Thomas approached her at a bus stop. After months of harassment, Samantha finally snapped. She turned to him and said, "I've told you I don't want to see you. I don't want flowers. I don't want messages. I don't want anything from you. Leave me alone." She thought her bluntness would put an end to it. But for Thomas, rejection wasn't closure. It was fuel. After graduating, Samantha returned to her hometown of Elk Rapids, which is a small, close-knit community where she thought she could rebuild her life. But Thomas followed her there. He even applied for the same internship she was starting. Samantha began to feel like she was living in a cage without walls. She told herself she couldn't be free of him. In 2014, terrified, she applied for a personal protection order. Judge Norman Hayes granted it and later admitted he has never seen a stalking case as severe as this. He also stated that Thomas was obsessed, absolutely obsessed with her, and he's going to do something very severe. The judge granted Samantha the longest protection order of his career, which was 6 years. For a while, Samantha was able to breathe. She trained as a social worker. She bought a house. Her life began to look normal again. But in September 2020, as the order expired, she spotted Thomas again, watching her play football at her club. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw him. It was a chilling realization. The nightmare wasn't over. In July 2022, Samantha filed for another protection order. This time, it was denied. By then, Thomas had joined her gym, her football league, and positioned himself back in her orbit, but always just close enough to not break the law. Samantha's fear grew into certainty that he was planning something. Fast forward to October 7th, 2022. It was the early hours of the morning when Samantha heard a floorboard creak inside her home. With her heart pounding, she reached for the hatchet she kept hidden under her mattress. Then, out of nowhere, a man charged into her room and jumped on top of her. That's when she realized it was Thomas. He then began pressing his hands around her throat. She started screaming as she felt his hands around her throat and he began to choke her. It got tougher for her to breathe and she thought he was going to kill her. Terrified, she gasped and said, "If you want to rape me, just do it." But Thomas leaned down and said, "I just want to talk to you, but not here." He shoved a ball gag into her mouth, wrapped her head in black gorilla tape until it pulled at her hair, snapped handcuffs onto her wrists, and blindfolded her. Then he dragged her to her own car. And as the car pulled away from her home, Samantha thought that once they leave her house, the likelihood of her surviving goes down drastically. When the blindfold came off, Samantha was inside a storage unit. But it wasn't just a room. It was a custom-built torture chamber. The walls were padded. A dim light bulb flickered overhead. A bucket sat in the corner to serve as a toilet. A chain was bolted to the floor. He takes off her bandana, and she was shocked when she saw everything. So many thoughts popped into her head as this was a real horror story. Thomas calmly explained that he wanted them to stay there for 2 weeks. He gave her pajamas and handed her an old football jersey with her name on it, which was something he'd bought back when he first asked her out over a decade earlier. He told her his plan was to fake her death. Then he would leave her paddleboard at a nearby lake, so people would believe she had drowned. At that point, Samantha's blood ran cold. She thought that there's no way they were just there to talk for 2 weeks. Hours passed and Samantha tried to reason with him. She begged him to let her go and promised she wouldn't go to the police. She tried to appeal to his emotions, telling him she could keep secrets as a social worker. But Thomas cut her off by saying, "What will convince me is if you sleep with me." Samantha froze as inside. Her mind raced. If I say no, will he do it anyway? Will he kill me? He holds the key to my life. She asked him directly, "If I sleep with you, you promise you'll let me go tonight?" He looked her in the eyes and shook her hand, as his integrity mattered to him. Samantha banked her life on that. "I felt myself go dead inside," she later said. "It was painful. I cried and I shook. I didn't want him to know I was disgusted and terrified. I didn't want him to get angry." When it was over, Thomas whispered, "That's all I've wanted for so long. You can't imagine how long I've wanted that. You're the person I'm supposed to marry." Samantha forced herself to stay calm. "I've held up my end of the bargain. You need to let me go." And astonishingly, he agreed. When police arrested Christopher Thomas, the sheer scope of his planning stunned investigators. Inside his rented storage unit, they found not only the soundproof chamber where Samantha had been held, but also rifles, a crossbow, and boxes of supplies. He had spent more than $5,000 over several months buying insulation, locks, restraints, and surveillance gear. He had even purchased Samantha's favorite food and a jersey with her name on the back, holding onto it for over a decade like some grotesque trophy. Detectives also discovered that he had installed a GPS tracker on her car months earlier, allowing him to monitor her every move. And then there was his attempt to erase his presence entirely. He coated his skin with hair removal cream to prevent leaving DNA, but he left it on too long, burning himself badly. His skin was still marked when police arrested him. When confronted, Thomas tried to downplay what he had done. He claimed Samantha had willingly participated in role play, but the evidence told a different story. On his phone, investigators uncovered disturbing images and videos, some taken without her knowledge, others documenting the chamber itself. His fantasy life was rehearsed and refined for years, and had finally broken into the real world. In court, the case against Thomas was overwhelming. Samantha's testimony, the physical evidence, the years of digital harassment, the storage unit, all of it painted a portrait of a man consumed by obsession. He was charged with kidnapping, torture, aggravated stalking, home invasion, and multiple counts of criminal sexual conduct. At his sentencing in 2024, the judge handed down a punishment of 40 to 60 years in prison. For Thomas, who had lived every day fixated on Samantha since 2011, it meant his fantasy life was effectively over. But the nightmare for Samantha did not end at the courthouse doors. In a phone call from prison to his mother, Thomas admitted that he thought about her every day for 12 years. It was a chilling reminder that, even behind bars, his obsession had not truly died. For Samantha, the knowledge that this man had devoted more than a decade of his life to planning her captivity is a weight she carries daily. She has said that the hardest part wasn't the night of the kidnapping, or even the hours chained inside the bunker. It was knowing that she had been right all along. For years, she told people he would never stop, and too many brushed her off as paranoid. Not until it was almost too late did anyone believe her.